Yo, 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 it's your man Who Did It. Who Did It this time, coming at you with another episode, another installment to the series Cross Reference. Well, we like to make it plain, but sometimes the topic may cover a variety of topics depending on the listener and obviously the presenter, that being myself, his content. All right, so we're going to get into it. The title of this cross reference is going to be called We Need to Have a Conversation. As of late, I'd say for the last 10 years, maybe even more than that, I've been noticing a trend on the social media platforms. Mainly from the left wing, and I'm just being blunt. Normally that's where my eyes gravitate to because it seems like the manipulation has been on the people that I'm close to, my family, my tight-knit circle. It just seems to be the target for the left wing. So I pay attention to the rhetoric that you all are aware of. Have you not been hearing the term, we need to start having a conversation? We need to have a conversation. And yes, the right wing is probably just as guilty. The reason why I use the word probably, not because I do not pay attention to what they're doing, but my expectations are not that high. I'm used to it. I don't mind when someone tells me what their agenda is and I believe them. But when you try to swindle me, when you practice charlatan motives, try to talk around me, sometimes try to talk through me, or as mentioned earlier, manipulate, I have a big problem with that. So when you hear the term, we need to have a conversation, normally it is people of color, which I am myself, a so-called black man. You hear our people saying to quote unquote the opposer, the enemy, the others. I've heard people make it direct. The people in Washington. Pick a metaphor, pick a word to fill in the blank. We're going to have to start having a conversation. We're going to have to have a conversation. We're going to have to have a conversation. My direct response is about what? If we continue to ask the same question, or more importantly, make the same threat, we're going to start to have a conversation. You're not to be taken serious. Not to be taken serious by me or others like me. You know why? Because it sounds to be a proposition, or you're begging for some type of response, some hug, some sign of equality. You want that handshake. You want to feel validated. And in a sense, depending on your age group, I could understand that. But for all of you who are conscious, all of you all who are quote unquote woke, why do you keep asking an enemy? Or pardon me, why do you keep telling an enemy? We're going to have a conversation. And then my second part of that is about what? Being treated fairly. I thought we already went through that. Being heard. I thought we already went through that. We continue to say these same things with no follow-up. Maybe because the people that are starting to make these threats are starting to fizzle out, which is not a bad thing at all. Or maybe, just maybe, there's no more need to keep talking about a conversation. At this point, we are all promoting and encouraging action. Not action violently. It could be silently, systematically, seasonally, if it makes sense. You pick time and place to execute these actions. But to keep making open hand threats about having a conversation, you are following these leaders. Let's just call it out. these trends, these actors and actresses online and on news stations abroad, globally, that are saying we need to have a conversation with our so-called oppressor. I don't necessarily hear it, once again, from the right side of having a conversation. Maybe theirs is more action. They're just ignoring you, or they're tired of you, or they throw you an appetizer but never really give you the entree. If y'all know what I mean. Biden was, to some of y'all, an appetizer. To me, he was not even water. I knew what the play was. I knew where it was going. But instead of talking metaphorically, let's just make it plain, shall we? Biden was a puppet. Okay, we know that now. But that's not what you Negroes were saying when the time was in need, so you thought. Because we need to have a conversation. You're right. We do need to be aware. And we are aware who the enemy is. And if you are still that foolish to think that I'm just talking pigmentation and color, you're sadly mistaken. Because classism is another enemy. I don't want to keep having a conversation with people who are classless, and also all they care about is class. This may go above some of y'all heads, because we have individuals and perpetrators that look like me, that at the end of the day, they are practicing the same rituals, the same principles as the so-called enemy. So I don't want to have a conversation with them. And let's just say, as we come to close, if you are interested in having a conversation with your so-called enemy, why would you want to tell him your plan? This is why some of you were so frustrated with Ice Cube's plea of just wanting to talk to the commander-in-chief of this so-called playground, Donald Trump. And this is no shade thrown at people who voted for him. At the end of the day, the conversations that need to be held with the individuals and their collective families first. What is our plan? Where do we plan on going? And I'm not talking about in a physical sense. I'm talking about in the sense of what does our family want to accomplish? Now, as we always do, we're going to bring this to close. Yahushua, who the world ignorantly knows as the Christ, is the only action at this point that would make sense. And this isn't religious banter, because we're not talking about religion. We're talking about a lifestyle and a choice to follow. You either follow him or you don't. And that doesn't mean you follow the figurehead or a symbol or a necklace or a quote unquote figure on television. We're talking about him in the spirit. That's the only thing that matters. And that's the conversation that they don't want to have. They don't want to have that conversation how we got there. Well, how do we get to this point that we need to keep having a conversation with our oppressor? How did we get to this point that we need to start having a conversation with someone who hates you? It's asinine. It's counterproductive. It's not going to work. So instead of pushing people away or discouraging, this was more of a cross-reference for those out there who are hearing the same banter. Pay attention to those who keep saying we need to have a conversation, because normally those are the same individuals that practice the scare tactics every 4 years. Pardon me. Normally, those are the same individuals that are telling you it's your fault if that person gets in office. Pay attention to normally who those people are. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to have to have a conversation. We're going to have a conversation. If they don't do this, we're going to have a conversation down in Washington. Then it's the same people that have no plan and no solution. And they normally are attached to some organization, some society, some fraternity, some order. that is counterproductive and polar opposites of who our commander-in-chief aligned us to. If you have to ask me who us is, then you clearly are on the other side. And again, this is not a race baiting topic. Stop looking for conversations to have with your enemy. Start to act and plan ahead. It's your man who did it. I'm out.